What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Altitude Show. I'm your host, Dave Brinker. Excuse a little rasp in my throat, a little under the weather. Today we have the Swon brothers on the podcast. Zach Swon, Colton Swon, my really good friends. These guys have taken me under their wing the last several years and helped me navigate the music industry. They're such good dudes. They got their start playing in their family band in Oklahoma, the Okies, and eventually found themselves later in life on the show The Voice, in which Blake Shelton chose them on his team. They landed a major record deal, moved to Nashville. Then they're touring with the likes of Carrie Underwood and Brad Paisley, performing on the stage with Blake Shelton, etc., etc., etc. They become very successful professional musicians in a very, very extremely competitive and hard industry. But they're also outdoorsmen, excellent humans. Can't say enough about them. Really excited for you to listen to this episode. While you're out there, don't forget to support those who support us. peaksequipment.com. If you're in need of gaiters, their gaiters are the best in the market for backcountry western hunting, period. I use them. All my friends use them. The headlamp that Peaks just came out with is bar none the best hunting headlamp that's ever been created. Go check them out. Use my code ALTITUDE for a discount. Also have amazing trekking poles and other things. Also, outdoorclass.com. If you want to learn how to become a better hunter, you need to learn from Corey Jacobson, Remy Warren, Randy Newberg. If you want to learn how to cook game better, you need to learn from Hank Shaw, which is their newest member of Outdoor Class. Outdoorclass.com. Use the code ALTITUDE for a discount. Last but not least, the hunting company, GoHunt.com. Whether you're doing research on a unit, or you need to buy gear for a hunt, or you need a new mapping software to have on your phone and on your laptop, Go Hunt has it all. It's the one-stop shop for the hunter. They are all hunters. I was just down there last week. They are hunters, so they know your problems and they're helping solve them. Use my code ALTITUDE at checkout for a little bit of something. All right, enjoy the episode with the Swon brothers. Appreciate you guys. Thanks so much. Welcome to the Altitude Show. I'm your host, Dave Brinker. The Altitude Show is brought to you by Peaks Equipment, the world's leading technical, hard goods, and accessories brand for backcountry enthusiasts. From trekking poles to headlamps to best-in-class gaiters, Peaks delivers a system of products that work to achieve optimal performance in the harshest conditions. Don't suffer on your hunting adventures. Peaks enables you to thrive on the mountain when everyone else is going home. Visit peaksequipment.com and use code ALTITUDE for 10% off today. That's ALTITUDE for 10% off on peaksequipment.com. Outdoor Class is the new source of premium outdoor education from trusted and knowledgeable experts. For hunters committed to improving their skills, Outdoor Class is the only subscription-based e-learning platform that provides unlimited access to video lessons from the world's most respected experts. Learn from industry leaders like Corey Jacobson, Randy Newberg, Remy Warren, and other experts across all the topics that affect you as a hunter. Make sure to follow Outdoor Class Official on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube, and take your game to the next level by going to outdoorclass.com. You can use code ALTITUDE at checkout for 20% off. That is ALTITUDE at checkout for 20% off at outdoorclass.com. I don't know which one of you wants to do this, but do you guys mind just giving a little bit of background to who you are and where you came from to the folks that may not know who you are?
Sure. Yeah, so we grew up in Muskogee, Oklahoma. We are brothers. It's weird. People still ask us if we're actually brothers, but yeah, we are. I am the older one, and my brother he's 3.5 years younger than me. I just turned 37, and we moved to Nashville after we grew up playing music, and we kind of always knew that's what we wanted to do. But long story short, we kind of just did this show called The Voice, met a guy named Blake Shelton, and that was in 2013. And we moved to Nashville directly after, and we've been touring and producing and writing songs. And
how did you guys know that you wanted to do music so firmly? Like, I mean, not every kid, but a lot of kids are like, I'm going to be a rock star someday. My daughter's going through that right now. She's obsessed with Taylor Swift, and she's 10. And I'm okay with that. but like when you guys were young, I think your dad was a musician, right? And he played like in the church band. Am I correct?
Yeah, so our parents had a gospel group growing up, and we traveled around in churches doing that. And I started playing drums for them when I was 7 years old. And Colton literally came out of the womb singing harmony. It was crazy. Like
Is that, sorry for interrupting, but okay, so I have a question on that specifically. I feel like people that can sing good harmony come out of the womb and sing harmony. I don't, it's like a hard thing unless you either got it or you don't.
He just heard it.
Yeah, it's not something I can not something I can really explain. Or when people are like, well, can you teach me that part? Or what do you hear? It's not something that, like, I feel like you can teach, guitar or, drums or even piano, but singing harmony is a different beast. That's one thing I don't really understand, why it pops in your head and why you gravitate towards parts. And I don't know. Like, that is, it's one of those mysteries that, like you said, I think it's just there or it's not. And I think some people can definitely figure it out when they play chords on a piano and stuff, or, or match notes. But those people that can just like latch on to parts, it amazes me. Like working with people that can just find those harmony parts like that. It's pretty fun.
So, okay, sorry, I totally sideswiped the question, but how did you know? And how did you know that you wanted to get into music?
I still don't.
I think we were fortunate enough to grow up. I played in little high school bands where we would like cover Metallica and stuff like that, and Ozzy Osbourne, and especially being a drummer, I was like all about rock and roll. But we were fortunate enough to grow up in a family that had a very diverse musical collection, and our parents did like this country music show in Wagner, Oklahoma, that had forgive me for being all stopped up. I'm a little bit under the weather. I can hear it. But
first, even go back before that, man, they played gospel music. Like Dave said, they gutted out this old tour bus and made their own like tour. But my dad put bunk beds and couches and stuff in it. And they went from church to church singing just gospel, like country gospel music, Southern gospel is what
that was your dad and your mom?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, my mom is a powerhouse singer. Like, she's a big harmony singer, and she's like 4'0" and just, can wail. And dad, plays and is more on the tech side of things as well, and just great singer, and just, they're both just super talented. But yeah, they had the gospel thing before we moved into doing like strictly entertainment.
Gotcha. So you guys are being raised in a household where your mom and dad are literally touring, singing, and it's pretty natural for kids to want to do what their parents do. I mean, that happens all the time. But the level of, it seems like you guys committed to this pretty early, but not only that, you could have just been like, well, since my parents sing in the gospel and tour and all this stuff, we need to do that. But it seems like at a certain point you were like, we want to write our own stuff, and we want to play, and we want to perform, and we want to be out there and in the spotlight. How did that work?
Yeah, I think, we started writing songs when we were really young, and, we couldn't help it. They just came out country. So I think that kind of chose us. We didn't really choose that. And we were very fortunate enough to play with our parents and watch so many. I mean, they had a great band. I mean, everything from fiddle to steel guitar to piano and drums. And these were all very seasoned musicians. And I can't speak for Colton, but for me, especially being a drummer at that time, that is kind of what sparked the fire for me. It wasn't so much being famous or even singing songs. It was just, I want to be as good as these musicians, and I'm still not, but that's kind of the thing. And that's what made me learn like multiple instruments and really get into the production world. Like I remember meeting one of my heroes, a producer one of the first guys we ever met in Nashville was a guy named Scott Hendricks. And I think I was 12 years old and Colton was 9 or something like that. And it was a chance happening, but we met him and developed a relationship, and he always has an open door, and there's way more. I mean, this story comes full circle. We'll probably get to that later.
We're going to get to that for sure.
Yeah. But, I remember saying, and he was producing some of my favorite records. I mean, Brooks and Dunn and John Michael Montgomery and all the 90s country that I grew up on. He had a hand in a lot of it. And I remember telling him, hey man, I'm gonna take your job someday. Sound like a stupid, cocky kid, but it was really just a compliment saying, I want to do this. Like, I want to produce records. And I would like look at the liner notes, and a lot of these were cassette tapes at the time, and look at, who played drums and who played guitar. And then I started realizing all these country records, it was mostly the same guys getting hired for everything. And I'm like, this is the group of people I want to be in. And I don't know, it just kind of morphed into a dream that, I thought was achievable in some form or fashion. And it wasn't fame. Like, that was never the goal. We went to a Ricochet concert. They sang Daddy's Money. And I remember seeing them out on stage, and I was like, man, I could do this. But I wasn't even thinking I want to be the front guy. I was like, I could play in this band, I could. And the lights, and that was my first concert I ever went to, and it was outside at a football field in Vian, Oklahoma. And I remember just, and my dad knew those guys. He went to high school with the Ricochet guys, and I remember thinking, man, I could do this. So I think that was the time when literally I went backstage, and Greg Cook, who played bass and sang in that band, ended up being our tour manager years later and drove the bus for us. But I remember him telling us that night, my dad went back there and he said, hey, if you got any advice for my son, what would it be? He was like, man, if this is what you want to do, put 100% into it. And that's exactly what I did. My brother was a little more responsible, but I just kind of blew off school. I did just enough to get by. And I quit sports. I went full throttle as a band nerd, and because I knew after high school, like, I was going to do something in this industry. And whether it was writing songs or producing or being an artist or playing for someone or whatever, that's what I was going to do. It was going to be my career. And, I just got lucky enough that my little brother was more talented than me and makes me sound better than I am. And we get to do it together. And that's just a blessing.
Colton, where were you at this point? You're the responsible younger brother.
Yeah. I was the kid growing up. I loved performing. I really did. And I loved doing the shows and then, watching mom and dad at church sing and stuff. But man, I wasn't all in at first. Like, I was so dead set. My grandpa was a preacher, my mom's dad. And I remember thinking, man, that's what I want to do. I want to preach. And he was preaching to like 20 people in this country church in the middle of nowhere. And I remember standing up on a chair. He'd like put a chair behind the pulpit so I could reach the pulpit. And I'd get up there and just start yelling, like he would, and like saying gibberish, basically. But man, I remember like that being like, man, this is what I want to do. Like, this is what I want to do. And the older I got, like, my brother and I, we started playing, and it became more of a job. Like, it's like, man, maybe we can make money. I remember setting out tip jars in coffee shops, or, getting tips, or, $100 bill from somebody at a nursing home that me and my brother played, made our own little tracks on like a Casio keyboard. And I was like, well, and I love money. So, that was pretty cool. And then I think a big turning point for me is, and I loved Ricochet, and that was really cool to see that, but it never like dawned on me that me and my brother could do that on that level. It wasn't registering like, or real. And I think when like Keith Urban came out, like the Somebody Like You, Keith Urban. I think that's when I was like, I grew out my hair. I was really vain, worried about what I look like. I was like, man, I kind of like this being in the spotlight thing. And I've always liked entertaining, but I was like, man, maybe this could work. I don't know. And so the older I got, the closer to graduation, like the year after I graduated, I got a job laying tile, and me and my brother were already gigging at this point, and money from from playing music was so easy. I was like, you go in, you do what you love. Like, it didn't feel like work. Well, I got a job right after high school because I didn't go to college or anything. And I went home. I was cutting, like, my arms are really hairy, and I was cutting like dried cement and tile glue, like all the stuff that goes on with it. I was cutting that out of my arm hair. I was like, we got to make this work. We got to make music work. I'm not cut out for this. I'm not that tough. So, like, and we've skipped a lot, but we made so many trips to Nashville, and it was always like, well, not right now, or maybe I think you guys will be ready 20 years from now. And as a kid, you're like, that just seems unreachable, and then you wake up one day and you're in the middle of it, paying your bills, supporting your wife, it like, and that's why I think if we always say this, like, if tomorrow someone's like, music is done, your career is done, I think me and my brother both would be like, okay, like, we did way more than we ever thought we'd actually, would achieve. And God has blessed us, like, just time after time again, of like, hey, here's an achievement. And it's never about reaching an achievement. It's just about, like, we're brothers, we're doing what we love, and we're going to keep walking through doors as long as, they're opening, and as long as they're paying our bills.
Well, I mean, right. So when you were, these young boys, and you're like, I think this is, what was it? Someone Like You, Keith Urban. Is that what you said?
Somebody Like You.
Somebody Like You. Yeah. I remember that video when that came out. So how did you make the decision to actually, I guess, Zach, you kind of already talked about that, to put the gas pedal down, but also maybe even more importantly, that's a scary proposition for most people. And I know a lot of my listeners out there are either struggling in a job they hate, or they have things that they would love to do that they never have. And so I'm always curious to ask people like you guys, we have lots to go in your story, but that initial kind of crux you went over to be like, this is what we're doing. I don't want to paint. I don't want to do any of that crap. I'm going to play music. We're going to figure it out. How did you break past that fear? If you had, maybe you didn't have any, I don't know.
I think this is going to sound so cliche, but I think the key one is you got to put God first. I mean, I think the moment we had our big break, we were at a point in our lives where, and I can name multiple moments like this, that we broke down and got on our knees and we're like, all right, we don't know what else to do. But, and we'll talk about all of them, I'm sure. But, in particular, we were both kind of not struggling. I mean, but we're like, man, nothing's happening. I mean, at this point, I decided at 12 years old what I wanted to do with my life. And when we went and did The Voice, I was 28 or 27.
Oh, wow.
Or
Okay. I've never known how old you guys were when you went and did that.
Yeah. So, there's a lot of
16 years.
Yeah, there's a lot of time that went into it, and a lot of shows that didn't pay anything, and a lot of shows that were supposed to pay something, and someone offered you cocaine instead, or whatever. Like, it's crazy, the stuff that we went through as brothers. But I think, when we did, I think the cliche answer, but honestly, the right answer is perseverance. Someone at a record label told me one time that you have to be good looking, lucky, and blessed all in the same day and the same time. And I was like, well, Colton's screwed on the good looking part, but that's kind of how it happened, man. We did The Voice on accident, and I remember we took a trip to Nashville, and this was like right after our parents stopped driving us back and forth. This is one of the first trips that we went on by ourselves, and we had set up through the contacts that we had made, just open mics and really getting out there and meeting people and going to people's shows and bars and any place that we could get into, because we weren't even old enough to get into most of the places when we started going to Nashville. But I think it all led to, we had just taken a trip there and basically gotten told no. The doors we did get into, they were like, you still need to work on it. Your songs aren't good enough. You're just not ready, whatever. And that is really hard to hear, but looking back on it now, I agree totally. I would not show any of those songs to anyone, that the songs that I played for those people back then. But, I think we came back, and I'm trying to put the timeline together, but it was like we left on a Thursday or Friday, went through the weekend, came back on like Tuesday, with our heads down, tails tucked. And our keyboard player, this guy named James, who played in our band back in Oklahoma when we were playing casinos and bars and whatever, he's a singer as well. And he's like, hey, I'm going to leave Thursday and go audition for The Voice in Memphis. And he's like, y'all should come with me. We'll split the gas and we'll all try to do it. And that would be leaving 2 days after we just made that drive back home, and we were like, man, I don't know, like that. We kind of just got our butts kicked in Nashville. Like, I don't want to drive back to do it again, and luckily we went, and, we waited in a line of 6,000 people, and we were the first yes for season 4 of The Voice. We were the first ones they said
no
yes.
way.
Yeah. So
who was in the room?
crazy.
Was that just like, that's not the people that judge that portion of it aren't obviously the main judges. Those were people that kind of filter people to get them up to the Blakes and the Gwens and the.
Yeah, there's quite a few steps to go through. The first one is kind of a production assistant that sends people to a casting director. And so he said, all right, you guys stay here. I'm going to send you on. And then we went to a hotel and waited on a phone call. And the next day we went and met with the casting director and sang, I don't know, 3 or 4 songs. Actually, Colton sang Somebody Like You by Keith Urban.
He did?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah.
But I think as far as the fear goes, at that point, we, like, musicians, especially on certain levels, man, they're just looking for the next gig. Like, we were just looking for the next week to pay. My rent was $125. Everything was covered. And I was worried about paying. I was like, when's the next gig? Like, where can we play? Where can we, how can we pay our rent? And getting over that fear, like, we drove back to try out for The Voice just because we're like, well, we got really nothing to lose. And, then it kept going. And we're like, if we get on, like, we're probably not going to win the thing, but it may give us some national exposure where we can get some more gigs around town, And, we just didn't think, we were thinking like this big, really. We should have thought bigger. But if it wasn't for The Voice, though, like, my brother and I, we didn't really have the means. And, like, I think that's where a lot of people get stuck, is they don't have the means, like the financial means to even get in a place where they're scared and, like, say, all right, I'm all in with music. Well, we still had to get to Nashville, and we still had to find a way to, at least put gas in the car to get to Nashville. And The Voice did that for us. We went, we shared a room at our manager's house, and a bed, with the room didn't have a door on it, but we slept in the same bed. We were taking meeting after meeting, and, there's that fear. We were kind of forced into the fear. We were kind of forced into, like, here's your shot. Like, you got labels wanting to talk to you. You got, and all that happened because of The Voice, and then,
right.
And the years of playing coffee shops and,
Right.
you know, just preparing for that moment. But until there was like a force, like, I don't even think we would even face the fear really, because, you know, you get what I'm saying?
Yeah, you were just putting one foot in front of the other.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're just playing music. You're like, well, we better book another gig and make another $100 because
Yeah.
I got my 100. By the way, could you find anywhere to rent right now for $125?
I don't think so, but it was, dude, it was a bunch of us dudes that didn't go to college, me and my friends, and my brother lived there at one time, I think. And but yeah, it was like we all, like, we shared a house together, and you know, that was our goal. It was $125 a month. It covered your utilities and everything. And
That's insane.
it wasn't.
It was, hey, just to be fair, it was in the worst part of Muskogee, Oklahoma.
It wasn't a great place. It wasn't like luxurious or anything. But anyway,
so you guys, you guys were at this point before The Voice, and obviously even back to when you said you met Scott Hendricks at 12. You said,
Yeah.
At what point did you start sending original songs to Blake's producer?
So Scott, the guy we met, that is Blake's producer.
Okay.
And he wasn't at the time, but he is a guy that always had an open door. At the time, he's the head of Capitol Records.
I think it was Virgin.
Oh, actually, Virgin.
It was Virgin when we met him, and
that label doesn't even exist in Nashville anymore.
But there's a big hole in this story. Like, you're wondering, well, how did you meet him? Well, my brother and I, we were going to Disney World with our family, like on a family vacation. We never made it there. We were like, hey, let's stop in Tennessee on the way to Orlando and, you know, get ourselves a record deal. And
so we told my parents.
Yeah. And we got kicked out of every label that you can think of that was, you know, around at that time. And just walking in with a guitar, my parents didn't go in because they knew what was going to happen. In fact, they filmed it and was laughing at us. But we'd go in, be like, hey, we're here to get a record deal. Can we sing for you? Like, no meetings, nothing. And, you know, just fearless. I wish I was more like that now. But yeah, we got kicked out of everyone but one. Virgin Records, they kicked us out, but it was our last stop. And the secretary, like in the front, that was taking like calls and stuff, she kicked us out. But I went back in. I was like, can we please just sing for you? Like, before we leave Nashville, can we just sing for you? We sang for this lady. And Scott Hendricks, Blake producer now, he was coming down for lunch down the stairs and heard us, and we made the Okie connection. And, you know, I was 9, my brother's 12, and that is what started, you know, the relationship with Scott Hendricks.
Well,
he handed us a business card and said, he said, because we were literally about to leave. I mean, it was our last stop, and my parents wanted to go back home. And he handed us a business card and said, hey, if you're ever back in Nashville, give me a call. You know, I'd love to hear anything you write. You know, I've got an open door. And I saved that business card. I mean, as a 12-year-old kid, I kept his number for a whole year. And the next summer, when it was time to go on vacation, you know, it was not Branson or Silver Dollar City or the beach or Florida or Disney World or Six Flags. Me and Colton both said, we're going back to Nashville. We're talking to this guy. And we went back, and we had a little, like an ADAT recorder that my dad had in the house. And he recorded like 9 songs that we wrote for us. And we took it back and showed Scott, and we were like, man, this is it. This is going to get us a record deal. And I'll never forget. I mean, we were a little bit older now, but he said, that's when he said, don't show this to anyone. These songs are not good. He said, give yourself 20 years. He's like, I think you guys will be ready in 20 years. At the time, that was so tough.
That's like eternity.
Yeah. As a kid, it is for sure.
Yeah. So okay, so you put that in front of him. He says no. You got 20 years. You leave Nashville again with your tail between your legs. Fast forward, you make it past the first audition at The Voice.
Yeah, man, it was crazy. It like we the whole time we were there, we prayed every day together. We stayed in a I don't know if they still do it like this. It was pretty early on, but we were in a hotel in LA for I don't know the better part of a year, 6 months for sure, and we just prayed every day. And we're like, you know what?
Do they pay for you to be there? They give you food, and like, how does one survive? And especially people. Okay.
Yeah, they take care.
Dude,
it's a great. Great.
We were so pumped because like between the per diem and just like the money you made from the show, I mean, we had never seen this much money in our lives. And it really wasn't that much money. It wasn't that much money, but like, you know, as musicians, we were like, oh my gosh, like we're making it. Like the per diem they gave you for every day just to eat on was more than what I was making like whatever job I was doing plus gigging or whatever. And so I just look back, I laughed so hard, and I was just like, this is going to change my life, you know? And, but yeah, it was really cool. And like, and those, like, it gets really small and claustrophobic in a hotel room with your brother for, you know, that long of a period. Cause we're not like in a suite or anything. This is just, you know, your basic, like, bed sitting by a bed, not a lot of walk room, you know. So, but yeah, so we had to pray every day.
I've heard Zach snore before, so I know what you were going through.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we've all shared a room.
It's just so funny that the relationships that were spawned there. You know, I mean, Colton met his wife on that show. Blake Shelton has been more than a coach on TV. I mean, he's turned into a really good friend that, you know, he's kind of ornery sometimes, but man, he's what you see is what you get. He's so genuine. And the fact that we're still talking to him, you know, 7-8 years later.
When did Scott become his manager?
That's not his man.
His producer.
So Blake is signed to Warner Brothers, and Scott is, you know, a big dog over at Warner Brothers. And, right. And, you know, that kind of comes with the territory when you've got a Grammy award-winning producer there at your label, you know.
But what? So you guys make it to the main stage at The Voice, and you got who was it? It was Blake, and who else there were judges at that time?
Shakira, Usher, and Adam.
Mm-hmm.
Dude, how nervous were you to sing in front of them the first time, or maybe you weren't? I don't know.
Oh yeah,
it was. Go ahead.
No, it was like terrifying. It was
Colton.
You know, it was like horrible, like so much nerves and stress. Like because we were thinking, you know, okay, we can go on there and sing a song, but we didn't really like think it through. Like, man, if we don't do well, like this thing lives forever. You know, once it's out there, it's out there. And so we're like, man, we can't suck because it can do just as much bad for you as good. So you start kind of going through all that, going through your head. And we still didn't do great. Like you're so nervous. You can hear it in the audition. And every time we sang on that show, we both look back, we're like, and I've only watched it maybe once because it makes me too nervous just watching it. But I haven't watched every performance, believe it or not. But hearing some of that stuff, I'm like, man, that just isn't that great. I wish we could do it over, you know. And like,
what song did you sing? Wasn't it like a Tom Petty song or something?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was a song that we had never sang before, and they kind of pushed us in that direction. And you know, they were right. There's producers for a reason. As a matter of fact, at the time, I didn't really sing a lot of lead vocals. I was more happy being the musician. It was the show's producer. And when we sang for the casting director, even Colton sang most of the melodies. And
I couldn't remember any words. We got out there and like, so what they saw like in the auditions is not really what we did on the show. And because we got to learn the songs and you have to learn it fast. And my brother has like this photo like memory, like you can't imagine. Like it's weird. And my brother can learn a song just like that, like lyrics. And that really is kind of, well, we've always sang harmony with each other, but we'd always switch off on leads and, you know, really take turns. And really, I was the ham growing up. Like, I need to be singing lead and be up front. And it switched on that show. We kind of got our sound, like our established sound on that show because I couldn't learn words. I just couldn't do it.
Interesting. So, all of a sudden you get pushed up into the front of the stage there, Zach, and they make it, was it Free Fallin'? Was that the song? I was trying to remember.
It was
American Girl.
American Girl. That's right. I looked this up not very long ago because I was showing my daughter. So you're playing American Girl. You got Shakira, Blake Shelton, Usher, and Adam Levine. Is that what you said?
Yeah.
Obviously in your head you're going, please be Blake. Please, no offense to any of those other people, but Blake's from Oklahoma. He's country. I mean, I have to assume they make it seem like you guys probably have to think about it on the show, but I have to assume you already had chosen.
I mean, they ask you, you know, if that someone turns around, who would you go with, you know? Yeah. And I mean, it's a TV show, you know, right. And I think it was pretty obvious who we would go with. But I will say, Shakira was the first one to turn around, and she's kind of hard to say no to. You know?
I would have given in to Shakira.
Yeah, she's sweet, and you know that's what I'm saying. This whole show, at least for us, was just so much more than winning or losing. I mean, it was an experience. I mean, the media training that you go through, and the interviews, and the hurry up and waits, and the, you know, we're gonna film until 2 a.m, and then you're back up at 4:30 to do it again, you know. And it's like it prepared us a lot for the industry that was waiting for us, for sure. And you know, Usher was another guy that turned around, and we played an event with him and Shawn Mendes, you know, two of the biggest superstars in the world. We did a thing with him in Boston for a radio station, and he was still cool. I mean, he hadn't been on The Voice in a couple of years, and he was still like one of the coolest dudes ever, you know. So the friendships that you form, and the people you meet, and the experiences, I mean, that was worth it all. I mean, we got to sing with Bob Seger. You know, I'll never forget after the show, which for people who don't know, we didn't win. We got third, but we made it to the finale. And after the show, we went and did a interview with Mario Lopez, you know, for like Entertainment Tonight or Extra or whatever he does. And
dude,
he was
come
like,
on, Saved by the Bell, bro.
Exactly. I
don't know him from those other things.
Yeah,
I know. That's all we could think about.
And he was like, well, you guys didn't win, but how do you feel? I was like, dude, who cares? I got to sing with Bob Seger on the finale of a TV show. Like, if you would have said, hey, you have the choice between winning The Voice or singing with Bob Seger, I'm choosing singing with Bob Seger.
Absolutely.
You know? It was a win. Yeah.
Yes.
Cool.
So, okay. So now you get third. Blake Shelton's your coach, and probably pretty quickly becoming your friends. And your whole life has changed. Because if you don't win, you don't automatically get a record deal. There's no promises, right? But It definitely gives you enough exposure to where you're getting phone calls.
Yeah, and you know, you gotta understand. We went from, hey, what's our next gig, to the $100 a month type of rent, to get to Nashville. You have a couple of days, and this was a lawyer. We didn't have anyone. You know, it's not like we knew what we were doing. So, you know, I get to Nashville, you have a record label meeting, and we're like, holy crap, this could be it. And then right after that, we had, you know, a booking agent call us, say, hey, I have, you know, thousands and thousands of dollars worth of gigs for you already lined up. You want to like sign with us? And like, it all happened like so quickly. And we basically had like one friend in Nashville, and we were sleeping on her couch, you know, and now she's our manager. And so, man, it was, you talk about overnight as far as like having to become like business people, like, cause no one ever tells you like music is like, but this much of it's more music business, you know? So, man, it was just like a whirlwind of meetings and and talking money and managers and percentages. And I mean, you could have told us anything, we would have agreed to it because we didn't know any better, you know?
Right.
So, and it really is, it's crazy. Like when you look back at, you know, what our business generated, and just as a couple of idiots from Oklahoma, man, we're like, this is insane. And we didn't have people looking over us or anything. So like, we probably should have made a little more back then. But it just is one of those things that we're just so proud that we've got not like years and years of just like making good decisions, wrong decisions, you know, and you just kind of learn from it. And that's because we weren't just tossed into it right after that show. But I will say, everybody that warned us, like, man, when you sign that record deal, radio tour life, it's so hard. And it was, but like my brother said, that the voice prepared us so much and like put us through the ringer so much in a good way. Just as far as our work ethic, that everything after that was just, it was easy. You know, it was just like, you guys aren't on the same level as far as like how hard we're working. You know, we were just dying for 20-minute naps on the voice. Like, we could just find a corner to, you know, take a little like snooze in. And, but yeah, it was a good whirlwind to be thrown into.
What was the first, once you guys got launched into that, you then got a record deal, I believe, right?
Yeah.
I want to know, I'm going to jump ahead a little bit, but I've always wanted to ask you, what was your first big tour that you went out on? Like, I'm talking like stadium level. And then secondarily, what was the feeling you got when you walked out into the first stadium full of people? Because I don't know who was the first big tour you went on? Was it Paisley?
Yeah, so we played a lot of one-offs with a lot of big artists, but I think the first official tour where we were on the bill was Brad Paisley, which, man, he's a hero of mine. I mean, I love his guitar playing. Actually, on my 18th birthday, we were playing a show, and my Fender had just released we were playing a show in Oklahoma, you know, for very little people. And Fender had just released like a replica of this pink Paisley, you know, guitar from the 60s that Brad had just kind of made famous again. And my dad gave it to me out on the stage, and I ended up playing a Paisley cover right then. Well, fast forward to the first night of that tour, I brought it out on stage, you know, when Brad was sound checking, and he's such a good dude. And I was like, man, will you just sign my guitar? I just want to hang it on my wall. And it's here in my living room. It's like, it's a pretty special thing to me. And I'll never forget you know, we signed to Arista, which was the label that, Brad is on. And, I just heard through the grapevine, through our booking agent and our manager, that Brad had listened to a early copy of our record and said that he wanted us on tour with him. And I was like, this is crazy, you know. I'll never forget the first night though, because I actually got sicker than I've ever been in my life. We rehearsed so much, had our 30-minute set down, and it was programmed out. We were ready, and we were supposed to go out with him, you know, in the middle of the show and do a song, and then do another song with him at the end. And I don't really remember how I got through our set, but I come down with the flu opening night, first show, and it was in his hometown, West Virginia. And I told him, I said, man, I don't think I can do the group songs. Like I'm dying, you know. And
let me just tell you what the band and everyone was going through. You know, my brother, lead singer, you know, he's the face, man. Like, without him, the show is really hard to do.
Right.
Man, in the middle of the set, and it did not, my brother was like pretty good all day. It did not hit him until the very first night in the middle of our set. It was like song number 2 or 3. And we have a talk back to where we can hear each other, and, you know, just our ears, the audience can't hear it. My brother kind of like stumbles back to the talk back, and he had to be running such high fever because it takes a lot for my brother to be like being sick to bother him. And I'll never forget. He gets in the talk back and he starts mumbling like, "I don't know what to do." I'm like, all the band, everybody's looking. We're like, what do you mean you don't know what to do? And he's just, and then he's like, I don't know what to do. And
and there was no alcohol. It's
no. It was sick. I mean, he was just really, really sick. And then he just walks off stage and like just leaves stage. And we're all looking at each other and I'm like, oh my gosh, like this is my worst nightmare ever. And like I said, I'm not good with words, so there was no way I was going to try to sing new songs off our record that weren't in my key. It was all in his key because the show was programmed, man. Like it's like we had it.
It is what it is.
Yeah, it is what it is. And so I just throw a curveball. The band, it was a pretty new band. Like you understand, we had just hired a band right out the gate. We didn't really know these guys that well, and but they did know one cover from our own shows that we do that I sing. And I did that song for which was It's Been Such a Long Time. That one.
Oh, yeah.
And we played that song for probably 15 minutes. And then finally my brother comes back out and is just
I went to the side of the stage and threw up and then came back.
Oh, dude.
Yeah.
Oh
that
my
is
gosh.
Brutal. Did you guys get yelled at for that?
No, Brad was super cool. He texted me right after the show. Was like, "Man, sorry you're not feeling good. Hopefully you'll be good tomorrow." And I was. I mean, I came and I didn't feel great, but I did the show the next day. Dude,
let me tell you some stories. A lot of people don't know this about this tour. One, he is a prankster. We got pranked pretty big in Green Bay. He put that we were Detroit Lions fans up in Green Bay. We weren't playing Green Bay, but Jordy Nelson was there, and they had the Lions like stomping on Aaron Rodgers and stuff, and we pretty much got booed off stage. But so that's a pretty funny video. But man, Brad, like he was so cool. He took us on, and I don't say this to brag. It's just like, man, I can't believe this stuff happened to us. Like he takes us on one night. He's like, "Hey, y'all want to go to California with me?" And I don't even know where we were playing, like where we were at that night.
No, we were in Colorado, and he didn't even tell us where we were going. He just came. He had his tour manager come and tell us, "Hey, pack an overnight bag and meet me at my bus after the show."
Yes.
And that's it. That's the only info we got. And we had a show in Albuquerque the next day. So we were in Colorado. We're supposed to be going to Albuquerque. And we just told our tour manager, like, "Look, Brad is telling us to pack an overnight bag and go with him. So that's what we're going to do." And so, yeah, continue.
The next thing we know, we're on a plane, like a private jet, his private jet to California. And I won't even say where he lives, but it was really cool. We went to his house, one of his houses there in California. And man, it was a great hang. The next day, we go for some run, like me, him, and one of his good buddies, and we all go on a jog. Then we grab some lunch, and then we start heading to the show. And there's like food on the jet waiting for us. Basically, right when we land, me and my brother go straight to stage and play our show. We get there just in time. And we told him, we're like, that's what it's like being like Brad Paisley being a headliner. He said, "Yeah, you just you show up, and do your show."
I have to imagine
really
you guys were feeling. I mean, this is like when, oh my God, we're famous. Like we're like rock star level. Like we're flying on private jets. We're touring with Brad Paisley. Did that screw with your heads at all?
For sure.
Man.
I think you definitely become entitled. I think it's hard when you don't have those moments because your career is like this, and and when you don't have those things and those like perks, you feel like, "Oh, I'm not doing enough. I'm failing." And it's not that you're failing. It's just like, man, sometimes there are some high moments. Sometimes there are some lower ones. And I think that's going back to what my brother said. It's just you kind of persevere through all of it. But it really messes with your head. You feel like I always deserve this treatment. I always, and it's really not the truth. Like we should have never, there's so many much more talented people out there that deserve it more. And you just got to be thankful for the moments you do have, and cherish them and talk about them sometimes just to say, man, we were blessed.
Dude,
I will say though, I will
crazy.
say to add to that though, I've met some people in this industry, not very many, most of them are cool, but I've met some that are complete entitled pricks. I mean, they're out there. But I feel like the biggest ones, like Blake and Brad and Carrie and the people that we've gotten to know really well, they are at the top of the game for a reason. And I think, while talent is part of it, I think the way they treat people and their character off the stage has a lot more to do with it than their talent on stage, and we learned that from Brad. And he was never like that. So, it's kind of one of those things where you are, I don't know what the expression is, but you soak up what's around you. You're a sponge, and we learned a lot. I mean, Brad would give me guitar pedals, out of his collection and say, "Hey, try this out." And then he'd be like, "Oh, well, here's how I set my amps." This guy doesn't have to do this. He actually has people on the road that do it for him.
Mm-hmm.
But he would come to our sound check and, help me set my guitar stuff and give me stuff. And that trip that we took on the plane, like I asked him, I was like, "Dude, what are we doing?" And he's like, "Oh, I just wanted you to try the best acai bowl you've ever had in your life." And that's what we did. We flew across the country to go get a really good fruit cup, and it was awesome.
Dude.
He's just a really good guy.
But I do think, man, I see it now. I see it more, especially in younger artists coming up. It's like when you're in your like early 20s, it's different than being in the business for when you're now. I'm 33, and like I definitely think you get humbled throughout the whole thing, and and you learn a lot, like because if someone's saying no, I did everything right, or I didn't make any mistakes, they're absolutely lying. And because it can get in your head, and it can make you very entitled, and and me and my brother, we talk about this all the time. There's things that we wish we would have done different all the time, of how we talk to people, how we treated some people that worked for us. And it's you look back and we've made phone calls recently saying, "Hey, back in the day, like I'm sorry for that, like we were jerks, we were the pricks," and I think you learn and you grow. But I definitely think that business can it can make you very entitled, and I see it a lot in young guys.
Was fame what you thought it would be?
I feel like, man, I don't know. I think it's really hard for us to consider ourselves famous. I think when we were on The Voice, it was more because fame is such a weird thing, because you can be famous for a lot of different things, but it was definitely weird walking through an airport and, you go from no one giving a crap in a coffee shop to you're flying for the first time and you can't get to the airport because people are wanting pictures and stuff. And when that dies down, you're like, yes, thank you. And then you're like, man, like it goes back to like, am I doing something wrong? What can we do more to get that back? And but I never really grew up wanting to be famous. I never really I wanted to influence. I definitely want to be able to make an impact on people's lives. But I don't think either one of us ever grew up saying like, man, I really, really want fame, like.
Yeah. Fame's such a weird thing. Like,
yeah.
And obviously I play music and stuff, but I'm not a professional touring musician like you guys, but I have, via my line of works, got to meet a lot of famous people, including musicians, and spent a lot of time with people that are considered famous. And one of the things I learned was, wow, there's no wizard behind the curtain in Oz. Like, these are all like super flawed people, just like the rest of us, that did a thing that a lot of people enjoyed, and they got a lot of notoriety out of it, or a lot of money, or whatever it was. And yeah, they're famous, but it's not like what 99% of the world thinks it is. And that's why I'm curious to ask those questions. And that's why I asked about that first feeling you get when even if you're opening for Brad Paisley, you still walk out and there's 5 or 10,000 people screaming at you when you just got done playing coffee shops for 10 people with their backs turned to you. There's no way that doesn't screw with your head. And not only that, the other thing people don't realize about what you guys do, if any of you listeners out there ever been backstage, when you're in high school, you always have this idea of like backstage, there's like hot tubs and champagne and hot chicks and, everybody's partying and I'm sure there is some of that some places, but my experience backstage, hanging out with these guys or whoever it might be, you go back there and it's actually a pretty underwhelming environment. A lot of cement, very cold, like forklifts, boxes. And then you walk across the cold parking lot to our tour bus, which actually tour buses are pretty cool. But I can only imagine, because I've never played shows at that level, that you're out there, there's 10,000 people screaming at you. And then the show, like you're on this huge adrenaline high. And then you walk out into the back where it's cold and it's cement and the lights are off, and then you get on a tour bus where it's just you and your band again, and everybody smells and you're all human again all of a sudden. It's like you walk out of fantasy world back into reality. You got to answer phone calls, maybe something you don't want to hear about. It's like life again. I have to imagine that's like a downer. And I don't know. One of the reasons I know that is because the small shows I've played, even like if you have 10 people that are like, staring at you and like singing your songs, it's like a huge adrenaline high. And then I've even noticed when I get off and I walk off just playing at a bar or whatever, I feel like a little depressed. It's like you're shooting up a drug of endorphins and like adrenaline, and then you get off and it's like super depressing because it's like real life again. You guys feel that way? That's why I asked about that first experience in that big stadium. Like, how was that?
Yeah, totally, man. I mean, I think it's, I was talking to a friend of mine about this. I think you have to have some sort of ego to be in this business. And that's not saying any kind of bad thing. It just takes, like, you have to be a person that wants to be in front of people, right? Like you feed off of that. And, I think there's a fine line of trying to mix that with real life. And I think one of the things, like you were saying, you get off and it's just you and your band, and I don't know if this is a mistake or if it's a good thing. It's what we did, but we got really close to our band members, and which is a great thing, cause it's like a family on the road, but we had, I think when we on that first tour, which, this is probably a mistake. This was us being young and dumb, but I think we probably had 13 people on a 12 bunk bus going out on this tour. And,
which begs the question, who shared the bed?
Well, most of the time the driver would usually not need a bed. So that was kind of the thing. But, I think it sucks, but that sucks when you get so close and these people are your families. But at the end of the day, they are hired musicians and they're going to leave. They're going to go take a better gig. I mean, it's just part of the business. I've accepted it now. But all that stuff can happen, or you got to fire someone because you got to cut budgets or whatever. All of that stuff. It's kind of what Colton said earlier. Like there's a big difference between music and the music business. And I think once you get off that stage, the business part sets in, and you start talking about interviews and merch sales and, negative numbers and, oh, your song stopped at the charts and man, I think some of our worst fights that we've ever been in our life has been with each other. I mean, one time we literally pulled the bus over and got in a ditch and fist fought because we were just so just, there was so much pressure to not only to succeed in this industry, to, you know, top your last single, or make sure your debut single does okay, or make sure this person at the label's happy. But not only that, but you're like, man, I want to keep this band together. I want to keep these guys paid. I want to keep writing songs. I want to have enough time to go home and record a record and, you know, whatever. It was just so much. And I think, I can't even remember what the fight was about, but we started screaming at each other on the bus and pulled it over. And our whole band thought it was done. Like we were canceling a tour and that was it. There was no more Swon Brothers. And our number one rule from the jump, before The Voice, before anything, was, okay, we're going to do this together, but we're going to remember that being brothers comes first. Like, you know, I think one of the saddest stories I've ever heard is about the Everly Brothers, you know, how they didn't talk for so many years over business stuff, you know, and that just breaks my heart, you know, and I think they eventually made up, but I don't want to lose any time with my brother because of a moment in a really big picture. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So I think we really had to navigate keeping everything separate, keeping a good head on our shoulders. I mean, I think one thing that helped with that is, you know, talk to your mom as much as you can. Talk to our dad. I mean, luckily they were never stage parents. They tell us straight, you know.
And also managing the stress of having a record deal. For those that don't know, like, some of the lingo that's going on here, when you get a record deal, and correct me if I'm wrong, guys, because obviously I've never had one. Well, with David Brinker Records, I have a record deal. But when you get a record deal, that's just the beginning. That's not like, I'm Keith Urban, you know. It's like they're saying, okay, we'll give you a shot and we'll invest a bunch of money in you, but if it doesn't work out, you're out the door, and we're going to know like in 6 months pretty much. So you guys have the stress of the record deal. You're learning business like through fire, because most musicians don't know a lot about business. You know, you guys are learning a lot all at once. There's a lot of pressure, plus the highs of becoming famous, whether you believe you were or not. I mean, you were, right? In that moment, you were much more famous than you were. That's a lot for any human being. Like, I just don't think our brains are programmed for that. Like, I have a hard time believing that they are. So, and I think that's my assumption is that's probably why a lot of musicians turn to drugs and alcohol. Right?
Yeah. I mean, I really, and you can talk about it all you want, that, and until you actually kind of go through it yourself, like, I can understand why certain people, you know, they, like, everybody wants to talk about like the good things about people, like, man, they're a superstar, they got all this going, they got it. Well, more than likely it cost that person a lot, you know, to get there, and not just time. I'm talking, it probably costs family and and wives and marriages, and man, it really is sad what the business can do, and that's the side of it I really nobody really likes to, you know, dive into and talk about, but it's very, very real, and the stresses can be huge, because this isn't like sometimes I would love just a 9 to 5 where it's just like, I'm not being judged on how well I write a song or how well it's produced, or, you know, it's just like, I'm going to get paid for doing a job no matter what, you know. And like, sometimes that just sounds so appealing to me, because we're literally at the mercy of just people's opinions, and and the world has changed over the last 8 years anyway, and everybody wants to give their opinion, and most of the time it's negative. People just want to talk negative just to talk negative on socials and whatever it is, and because it's entertainment for them, you know. So yeah, and so you deal with that now on top of, you know, like, none of us wanted to grow up and be content creators. Like, we didn't dream of like being Facebook content creators and Instagram content creators. Like, none of us, like, artists agreed to that. You know? We didn't grow up as kids like, this is our dream. I think there are kids now that actually want to be,
Right.
influencers and on socials and stuff. But, that's not the way we grew up. We come from an era where that wasn't a thing yet. And so you learn to adapt with that. And that's a new stress. That's just a whole nother level of stress, because it's just a daily grind of people's opinions and stresses that you never really asked for, but it's necessary. And
it's crazy because you have to feed that monster. Like if you're trying to be an artist right now and you don't, music isn't enough, basically. And anybody that's an executive will tell you that. Like it's just not enough. You have to do all of this content and manage all these sites and engage and at the same time try not to piss someone off. And how hard that is in 2022.
Yeah.
It's like, it's really a whole new ball game, but at the same time, I think it's a really, I don't want to talk all negative about it, because I think it's evening the playing field for a lot of artists. I think your ability to be seen now is easier than ever. One video on TikTok, I know multiple people who have signed record deals because they blew up a verse and a chorus on TikTok, and I think that is cool. I mean, back in Merle Haggard and George Jones days, like, they had to really travel to play one song live for someone and hope that they'll hit record. It's like, I think it's a great opportunity, but it also is such a, it's a heavy burden sometimes.
Oh, I mean,
and I will say my brother handles most of that. Like, I'm definitely not from a social media age. It was a little more popular when he was coming up, but I mean, I read the stuff, but I'm way too much of a loose cannon. It's hard for me not to respond, to people.
Zach's he's typing and answering comments.
But going back to what you said, though, man, I definitely think there are people that just have mentally not been able to cope, and rightfully so. Like it's a lot to take in. Like I can't imagine there, and there's a reason my brother and I think if I had advice for like musicians like that are paying their bills, or like, man, how do we get to the next level? I'm like, I would really at this point, be careful what you wish for, because if you're happy where you're at playing music and doing what you love, like, man, sometimes it's better, the grass ain't always greener, so I just can't imagine like being on a Blake Shelton level, and because I mean stuff that me and my brother have gone through, just even at the levels that we've reached, like you can't. Like there's stuff that I don't even know if I've talked to you about, Dave, but like it's unreal. Like the stuff that social media alone can cause you. And so I really, man, we're both super happy right now. We're both making music we want to make. We're not pitching to labels every day, trying to get back on radio and taking record label meetings, trying to meet with bigger management company. Like, man, we've got a good team. We're making a good living. We keep walking through the doors that we should be walking through. We just got the Blake Shelton cut with Body Language, and man, that should never happened. Like we've just been blessed, dude. And it seems like the more that we focus on the things that matter, like family, the big man upstairs, and writing songs that we want to record, we're not really answering to anybody else. Like it seems like that's when things really start happening, that like, that's when doors open and you get to a place where you're like, I'm pretty content, and like content, I don't think is bad. Like,
no, it's fleeting. And it's in the moment, it can feel a little boring sometimes, because you're like,
right,
I feel really good. Like maybe I should be challenging myself. But when you lose it, that's all you want back. And I like I said, I'm not a musician like at your guys' level. I'm from a different industry, but I have lived a pretty public life the last 13, 14 years and hit some major walls with it and had some really big learnings with trying to figure out who I am and all those things. I can only imagine the level of scrutiny and stress that comes along with your guys' lifestyle. I think one line I can draw, because I talk to a lot of entrepreneurs, and you guys are entrepreneurs. I mean, that's what you are. You do music, but you have a very disciplined entrepreneurial spirit. That's why I asked you in the beginning, how did you make that decision to do it? And now we're 20 years later or more, and you're still doing it. Most people give up after like a month, right? That entrepreneurial spirit will lead you down a path that's amazing and beautiful. And like, I wouldn't trade that spirit for anything. I have the same drive for different stuff. But it comes with great sacrifice, and it comes with a lot of problems that you wouldn't have to deal with. They're just a different set of problems. Right. Everybody's got problems. I've had a 9-to-5 before. I hated it. But I feel the same way sometimes. It's like some days I wake up, I'm basically an owner of 3 different companies right now. Half the days, somebody told me yesterday, you're like a dude sitting in a burning house and you're like smiling. Like it's just total, it's like total chaos. Like, yeah. And some days I wake up and it's really exciting and it's all I want to do. But also some days I wake up, I'm like, dude, I wish I just knew a paycheck was coming and like just go to work. And then, but also more importantly, I could just turn it off and not even think about it till 9 o'clock the next morning. Mm-hmm. But I just don't know if that's the way we're wired. I think sometimes we feel like we'd want that, but since I've been there and had that, I know I don't. So I'm like, you know what? No, that's not what I want. And just because today sucked doesn't mean that this isn't what I want. I enjoy the adventure. And I think, I've gotten to know you guys pretty well. And that's one of the things I love about you guys. You're so adventurous. Like you've become business savvy, you're talented, but you've figured out a way to build a life that is like one in billions, whether you want to believe it or not. You make a living writing, producing, and playing music, and you live in a beautiful place, and it comes with great sacrifice, but also it's a beautiful thing. And I think people would be doing themselves a favor to listen to your guys' stuff. Like you have really deep stuff. You also have really fun stuff. I do want to talk about the Blake Shelton cut because I think that's a really important story that I stole it from you guys. And because I don't really have anything exciting to talk about when I play a show. So I say, it's like my name drop is like my friends wrote a song that's on Blake Shelton's new album. So, I mean, I know I suck at singing, but do you guys want to hear about that? And I'll play like a crappy version of it, but I'm just going to sum this up. You meet Scotty Hendricks, 12 years old. Sometime later, he becomes Blake's producer. Mm-hmm. You get third on The Voice. Blake's your coach. Blake becomes a mentor. And, prior to that, you were sending songs to Scotty even before he was Blake's producer. Here about 2 years ago, you sent a song to him. And usually the answer is no answer or meh.
Or pass. Yeah.
Yeah. But this one was different. Like, could you tell the story?
Yeah. So we wrote the song Body Language with 2 of our buddies, Ryan Beaver and Matt McGinn. And it wasn't written for Blake. We just got together to write a song like we normally do. And here's the thing. I've sent Scott Hendricks songs since we met him. I mean, every year that we recorded and wrote songs back in Oklahoma and on our little crappy system, I would send them to him. And I used to, burn CDs and send it in the mail, and most of the time it's, you're getting better, but again, don't show this to anyone. These are not good, and over the last few years, he's a tough nut to crack, over the last few years, he'll say, I'll send him a tune, and it's mostly for feedback. Like, I'm not pitching. Even when we sent this, we weren't pitching the song. Although we sent it to Carrie because, friends in the business that we've worked with, we got to tour with Carrie. She's an Okie, and we send her stuff too, just to get feedback, not for any other purpose. Like, what do you think about this? And we sent it to Carrie, and she was like, you should try pitching this because this is a pretty catchy song.
She also, this is such a big part of the story that we never touched on. So Carrie here's the demo. It was Matt McGinn singing the demo. And she's like, hey, this is better than like 99% of the stuff I get pitched on a daily basis. Have you guys ever considered pitching songs? We're like, not really. We're just going to cut it for ourselves. We don't know if we have that power to pitch really to like a major artist besides you, Carrie. So, and then she goes, also, ... I would consider calling or naming the song Body Language. It just comes off sexier, than the original name was Without Saying a Word. And if she would have never said that, I mean, think about everything that had to happen.
Oh my God.
For it to become the title track of Blake's record, which is Body Language. Because Without Saying a Word, that's not that is not the title of an album.
Right.
It's just like, there's just so many like God moments that we look back. I chuckle because like everything was orchestrated, and whether you think so or not, it was. And go ahead, continue.
Yeah, so we like we normally do, we sent it to Scott, and I said, hey, here's a new one we wrote, and we were probably 2 or 3 weeks away from putting the song out on Spotify for ourselves. I mean, it was done and mastered, and we were like, hey, here's a new song. I want to see what you thought about it. And he just basically said, hey, are you, hell bent on releasing this? And I was like, why? What's your thoughts? And he's like, well, if you can hold off, I'd like to put it in a pitch pile. And it wasn't until the next email that he said, yeah, we're going to pitch this to Blake. And then we saw him at an event, and we didn't hear anything for a while. This was probably 3 years ago. And we saw him at an event probably 6 or 7 months later. And I think he knew, and it's really funny because he just was sitting right behind us at this thing. And I think he knew that we were like curious, like what's going on, And so we didn't even have to ask. He's like, well, I still got your song, it's kind of up to Blake. He's got to listen to it, and here's the thing. We could have just sent this song to Blake in a text message, right? It's not really the road we wanted to go down. We wanted to earn it. We wanted to send it through his producer like everyone else. And we wanted to keep the relationship with Blake a friendship. I don't want him to think that we're always trying to get something from him. And, the text thread we have now literally consists of deer and, dirty jokes and pictures of poop, and like it's really it's just like brothers, and so I think we did it the right way. I mean, it worked out, but it took a long time for Blake to actually hear it, and then finally he must have listened to it because he texted us and he was like, boys, I didn't know y'all wrote this song. This is awesome. I really like it, and then we didn't hear anything for like another year. And then we were sitting watching a football game one night, and Scott called at like 10 p.m. and was like, hey, we just cut your song, and Blake wants you guys to sing on it. And it was like the best phone call ever. And then we didn't hear anything for another year and a half, and he released other songs like God's Country and all this stuff. And he released the Greatest Hits album that had new songs on it that our song wasn't on there. And we're like, well, it didn't make the cut, And then we were sitting at a Mexican restaurant one night, and Blake texted us, and he was like, hey, did you guys hear about my album? And this was like a week before his album was supposed to release, and all they had released was a release date, like nothing else, no photos, no anything. And we're like, oh man, we've learned in Nashville, it's such a heartbreaking town to just assume the worst, and then you won't get disappointed. So we're like, oh, well, it didn't make the cut, whatever. And we're like, no, what's up, man? He was like, well, I just thought y'all should know that you wrote the title track for my record. And then literally like the next day, they released the press release, and it's got his picture, and it says Body Language, and it says featuring the Swon brothers, and it's just the coolest feeling ever, you know.
Dude,
it's just great.
That story gives me chills every time. I mean, what an incredible accomplishment for, 20 years of grinding with no backup plan.
Yeah, we're idiots.
No. That's what I'm talking about. You guys it's an amazing story. And congratulations. That song obviously can be found. I mean, Blake released it 6 months ago, the album itself, and then it's a title track on the album, so you can check it out. It's called Body Language, and hopefully, I'm putting my vote out there for it to be a single someday. I hope it is. Hey, where can people find more about you guys? Website, social media? Tell me.
Our MySpace is.
Can you still look up I heard someone tell me that like MySpaces are still alive. Like you can still actually look at. I need to go back and look at my profile. It'd be embarrassing.
Yeah, I think my profile is still up. It is. It's very embarrassing. And I can't get in it. Like I don't even know what emails with it. But, but yeah, man, you can follow us. On Instagram, Facebook, The Swon Brothers, SWON, and we're not hard to find, but.
If you spell our name right, we're really easy to find.
SWON.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate you guys. Love you guys. And you're inspiring to me. And I know you're inspiring to a lot of other people. And I appreciate you coming on tonight. I know it's not late for you guys because you guys stay up way later than I do. See, I'm usually in bed by 9.
Dude, I was going to say, every time I've ever been bunked up with you, like you're an old man. I was really shocked that you wanted to do this at 9:30.
Well, I wanted to get you guys in your prime.
Yeah.
So actually, this is still early for you guys.
Yeah, it is. We're just not waking up, really.
Well, I appreciate you guys, and let's have you back on soon.
Hey, congrats on the show, man.
Let's go get a bull this year. I'm gonna try to make it.
Oh yeah, Zach came out a few years ago to hunt elk with me, and Colton was invited as always, and I think both of you should come. It'd be amazing. You have an open invite. No, I can't promise that it's going to be actually good, but Zach learned the hard way that there's I can't predict when it's going to be good and bad.
Yeah, I love it. I appreciate the invites. I just like to go with guys that I know that's going to get me in front of bulls. So,
well, Zach would have been in front of a bull, but he slept in. So, and
the last day before I had to go get on a plane, yes, I did.
That's what happened.
Kenton Bryant went out with me that morning. Zach decided to sleep in, and Kenton got the bull.
Yeah,
but
the only bull that we saw on the entire trip.
That's true. That's true. Yeah. It was a really, really fun trip, but it was like 100 degrees that entire week. It was brutal.
I think we covered 500 miles of Oregon.
Yes, easily. We did. I showed them every corner of Oregon. So next time you come out, you're going to come out a little later when it's like the better part of the season, and you'll see more elk. And Colton is required to come this time. But here's my only here's the trade. I want to come whitetail hunting.
Let's go. Hey, it's going to be the same thing. You're going to come to Oklahoma, and you probably won't see anything.
Well, thank you guys. I appreciate you. Well, thanks for tuning into the Altitude Show today. Make sure to get out and support those that support this show. GoHunt.com, PeaksEquipment.com. Also, you can support us by subscribing to our YouTube channel or wherever you listen to podcasts. Subscribe there and leave a 5-star review. Nothing less than 5 stars. We'll see you next week with a new guest. Have a great day, everyone.